Okay, let's just admit it. That title, Stop Apologizing for Being Selfish, it probably made you flinch just a little, right? It goes against pretty much everything we're taught about being a good person. But what if we've got it all wrong? What if selfishness isn't the enemy we think it is?
I mean, we've all heard that phrase, don't be so selfish. It's a jab we learn on the playground, and it follows us all the way to our jobs. It's become this powerful social weapon. And, somewhere along the line, we all just sort of agreed that it was one of the absolute worst things you could call someone.
But here's a really interesting thought. In our big rush to label selfishness as bad, did we forget to ask a crucial question? Do we actually need it? What if, and stick with me here, what if being selfish is not just useful, but maybe even essential?
To really get into it, we have to look it right in the eye first. So where does this supposedly terrible behavior actually pop up in our everyday lives? Well, think about it. You've got the really obvious kind, like the person who practically tackles someone to get the last good seat on the bus. Then there's the sneaky kind, right? The relative who just happens to grab the one perfectly ripe mango from the bowl. And, oh, the frustrating kind. That person in a meeting who just will not give up the microphone. We all know these people, don't we?
But what if these little annoyances aren't just modern quirks? What if they're actually pointing to something much, much deeper? An instinct that's been baked into our DNA for a very, very good reason.
When you strip away all the layers of society and manners, you get down to one basic law of nature: self-preservation. It's true for every living thing out there, from the tiniest ant to the biggest elephant, and yeah, for us too. Looking out for number one isn't just an idea, it's a requirement for survival.
And this is where the real tug-of-war happens in our lives. On one hand, society tells us, be selfless, help others first. But on the other hand, the unbreakable rule of survival says, hey, you can't feed anyone else if you're starving. The airplane oxygen mask analogy is just perfect for this. They instruct you, they don't ask, they tell you, put on your own mask first. Why? Because if you pass out, you're no good to anybody.
So this creates a pretty weird conflict, doesn't it? We instinctively know that a little bit of selfishness is necessary for our own well-being, but we still feel kind of squeamish admitting it. And that leads to this fascinating little social dance we all do.
We've gotten really, really good at putting a pretty mask on our self-interest. The person who wants to get rich? Oh no, they're creating jobs. The influencer who craves fame? They're simply sharing their vision. And of course, the parent who moves heaven and earth for their own child, they're just wanting the best for them. We learn to wrap our selfish motives in the language of altruism, so everyone, including ourselves, can feel better about it.
But, and this is a huge but, there is a line. And when you cross it, that's what gives selfishness its ugly reputation. So when does this necessary, hardwired instinct twist into something truly toxic?
Here's what it looks like when that line gets crossed. It's the boss who takes all the credit for your work so they can get ahead. It's that friend who, funny enough, only seems to call when they need a favor. See the difference? This isn't about survival anymore. It's about sabotage. It's a one-way street where, for them to win, you have to lose.
For a really stark, heartbreaking example of this on a massive scale, just think about the Titanic. Those lifeboats, many of them half empty while people froze in the water, that wasn't just a mistake. It was a moral catastrophe. It was a terrifying example of self-preservation mutating into a deadly disregard for everyone else.
And that gets us to the core difference. See, healthy self-interest is what drives you to build a better life. But destructive selfishness, that's a whole different beast. It works on the twisted idea that your gain must come at someone else's direct expense. And it's the breeding ground for things like jealousy, greed, and even cruelty.
So, if selfishness can be both a life-saving tool and a destructive weapon, what are we supposed to do? How do we live with that? Well, the answer, as it so often is all about finding the art of balance.
Maybe the best way to picture this is to think of yourself as a trapeze artist. You have to be selfish enough to have a firm grip, right? To protect yourself, to maintain your balance, to keep your soul intact. That's step one. But step two is just as critical. You have to be aware enough to remember there's someone else on the trapeze with you, and you have to honor their dignity and their safety too.
And really, it all comes down to this one simple but incredibly powerful rule. Honor your needs, pursue your goals, protect your boundaries, absolutely. But the moment doing that starts to cost another person their basic dignity, that's the line. That's when you know you've gone too far.
So the last question isn't for me, it's for you. In your life, at your job, with your family, with your friends, where is that line for you?
How do you make sure you're putting on your own oxygen mask without ripping it away from the person sitting next to you? It's this constant, delicate dance, and learning the steps might just be one of the most important things we ever do.